Assalamu alaikum everyone. We are moving on to lecture 24. We are going to discuss argumentative and persuasive writing. Previously we covered descriptive writing and before that narrative writing. So let us see what argumentative writing is and how do you do it. Now, before I begin, I want to make clear the difference between argumentative versus persuasive writing. Very simply put, argumentative writing is the kind of writing in which you try and convince your readers to accept your idea as true, and you're basically using statistics, facts, and figures. Your writing is based on logic and reason. Now, on the other hand, when you are using persuasive techniques, you're trying to convince your readers using emotion and your personal ideas. So you're trying to persuade someone through the use of emotions and your personal opinions. Now, in persuasive writing, you may not acknowledge any opposing views, you may not use any facts or statistics, you're simply using your emotion and your own opinion to convince people. So this, very simply put, argumentative is where you use logic, you use statistics and facts to convince somebody. When you're trying to persuade someone, on the other hand, you are using your emotion and your opinion. So we are going to primarily focus on argumentative writing. Now, what do I mean by argumentation? This is the reasoned and logical way of asserting the soundness of a position, a belief, or a conclusion. Argumentation takes a stand that is supported by evidence, and it urges people to share the writer's perspective. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to make sure others see that your argument has logic and that the others can share your perspective. Now, argumentation has three main purposes. One is to convince the other people to acknowledge that your position is valid. Two is to simply defend your position. And three is to question or refute a position that you think is wrong or is dangerous or is simply untrue. So this depends on what your stance is and what you're exactly trying to argue. Now, when you have been given a topic, the way you have already been assigned topics in your presentations, you have to be very open-minded about your topic. Once you see the title or you see that topic sentence, you have to make sure that you consider all sides of a question. Now, when you look at the topics that have been assigned to you, for the majority of you, I have already formulated a thesis statement for you. So what a thesis statement is, there is an example in front of you on the screens. So the example is this, that education is the best way to address the problem of increased drug use among teenagers. Now, in this statement, you would notice that the assertion or the argument is that education is the best way in comparison to all the rest of the ways or all the rest of the solutions. This, that is, education is the best way to address this problem. So this is your claim, and now you're going to support via evidence what this claim is. So number one, you have to make sure that your thesis statement is debatable. It shouldn't be some sort of fact. It shouldn't be something self-evident or obvious. For example, saying the earth is round. Well, you know, that's a fact. You can't argue about it. You can't make any claims about it because it's true. Similarly, saying that Pakistan is lacking in education or the education system of Pakistan is weak is again something factual. You can't really argue about it in one way or the other. So make sure that your statement is debatable. This is why for many of you, the kind of statements that I've given you are debatable. They're the kind of statements that you can either argue for or argue against. Now, at the same time, you have to make sure that your thesis statement is a claim that at least some people would object to. That is when it would become an argument, and that is when you would try to convince other people. Now, so you've seen your topic, you've got a thesis statement. Now you have to analyze your audience. You have to consider the values and interests of your audience and whether your audience is likely to be friendly, hostile, or neutral to your thesis. Remember, your audience will need evidence and reasoning that will lead logically to your conclusion. So, who are you speaking to? Now, in the case of your oral presentations, you would be speaking to me and you would be speaking to the rest of your peers, to your classmates, to the people that you take this course with. So consider the various backgrounds that your audience comes from. Consider the kind of values they might have, the kind of religious beliefs they might have, the kind of things they've read, the kind of things they haven't read, the kind of things they're likely to believe and they're likely to have assumptions about. Once you think about it, you would realize the kind of things your audience would naturally be led to believe, or the kind of things they would be hostile to. So keeping this in mind will help you shape your argument in a better way. So now what you've done is you've got your statement, you've analyzed your audience. Now your third step would be to gather evidence, because you've got a claim and you've got to support it. So you have to make sure to support all of your points with evidence, facts, and opinions. Make sure that no point is left without any fact or any sort of support behind it. You have to make sure to assess how effective your evidence will be. Naturally, there's going to be evidence that's going to be weak. There's going to be evidence that's going to be very, very effective and that's going to quickly convince your audience to take your stance. So, of course, the most obvious and the most common type of evidence would be your facts, statistics, and of course, there would be observations, things that you have seen, things that the majority of people have seen, things that your audience is likely to have experienced. They are going to support your claim. So apart from facts, statistics, your general observations, you could also draw some facts from your own experiences. But of course, you have to be careful about it. Your own experience might be something that's unique, and it might not convince other people very well. So you have to make sure that the kind of experience that you're talking about, it is something that people would relate to and something that they would understand or something they would logically agree to. Then, of course, your facts may also be supported with opinions or interpretations. So you're saying that so-and-so percentage of people, say, have low literacy rates because of so-and-so reasons. Then you have to give your own opinion, or rather, you have to give an opinion of critics or people who have a good standing, people whom other people are likely to believe in. So think about that as well. So opinions of experts are more convincing than those who lack knowledge on the topic. So for example, if you want someone to give you an opinion on, say, artificial intelligence, then you would likely not be quoting me on it because I don't know a lot about it. So you have to find experts. Naturally, you'll have to search the internet. You'll have to go and talk to your peers, your professors, anyone who has lots of knowledge on your topic. You can go and quote them and say, so-and-so expert, so-and-so critic agrees with your point. That's going to support your claim as well. So just quickly reviewing, evidence, it'll be facts, it'll be statistics, it'll be observations, it'll be your own experience that people can relate to, and of course, it'll be opinions of experts or people who have knowledge about the things that you're talking about. Now, of course, when you're gathering evidence, you have to make sure that there are 3 points that are there. Number one, that your evidence is relevant. Of course, this is very important. Make sure that all evidence that you've gathered directly relates to your claim. Don't talk about irrelevant stuff. Number two, representative. It should represent the full range of opinions about your subject and not just one side or the other. So, for example, your opinion or whatever evidence you've gathered, it only talks about, or say, it only covers one side or one aspect of your argument. That is not how it should be. You should make sure that it represents the full range of opinions. That means that it covers a wide variety of experts, it covers a wide variety of areas, a wide variety of angles. For example, if you are talking about, again, that education is the best way to solve the problem of drug abuse, then you should not just talk about activists or community workers who try and stop drug abuse. You should also talk about what family members say. You should talk about what schools say about it. You should talk about what teachers say about it. So, representing all the people who are involved in this whole problem of drug abuse among the youth. That is what representative means. Then, of course, your evidence should also be sufficient. It should be enough that it would eventually convince your audience. So you have to avoid giving evidence upon evidence, trying to convince your audience and lacking at it. So make sure your evidence is relevant to your claim, it represents all of the people who are involved, and it is sufficient to convince people. So you've got your statement, you've got your evidence gathered. Now you have to make sure that you cover counter arguments. Naturally, you're picking up one side of your claim. There are going to be people who are going to object to it. They're going to say, no, you're wrong, or they're going to say, hey, you forgot about this. So that completely refutes what you're saying. So when you think about counter arguments, you have to address the most obvious objections to your case. If you say education is the best way to, say, solve the problem of drug abuse among youth, there are going to be a couple of people who are going to say, no, that's wrong. Family ties or stronger family ties is a better way to solve the problem of drug abuse, or community involvement is the best way to solve the problem of drug abuse. So you have to think carefully what is going to be the most obvious objection to your claim. Once you address that, you're basically making your argument stronger because you're trying to convince the readers that your argument is sound. So what you do is you gather these counter arguments, you talk about them already, so your opposition doesn't get time to talk about it, and then you're going to refute those arguments one by one. You're going to refute them by showing that they are weak or unsound or irrelevant or no longer applicable or whatever it is. So this is going to help reinforce your own case. So for example, if there is an objection that family ties play the biggest role in countering drug abuse and that's the best way to solve it, then you could say that yes, some people think that, but that's not really true, or evidence says, or expert researches prove that that doesn't work, So you're taking that counter argument and then you're refuting it through further evidence, through further statistics and facts. Now, how do you introduce a counter argument? So if you remember in your oral presentations and your terminal assignment, you've been told to give 3 arguments and 3 counter arguments. So you've already given your arguments. How are you going to begin a counter argument? What you can do is you can use the following phrases that are there on the screens in front of you. You can begin like this. Some people believe that family ties rather than education is the best way to solve the problem of drug abuse. You can also use the words critics argue, or on the other hand, one study, one person, one critic, one event shows this. Then you would go on to out that argument. Then you would explain it further so that people can understand. Now, once you've explained that counter argument, now you're going to begin to refute it or reject it. So you would start your sentence with phrases like this. While this may be true for some people, so on and so forth. And then you could say, although these critics may have been correct before, but now new evidence shows this. Or this may have been accurate in the past, but now this is how it is. Then you would continue on in your refutation by explaining more reasons why this counter argument is weak. In this way, you would explain to your audience why your original argument is strong. So keeping in the same example, that education is the best way to solve the problem of drug abuse among youth, you've got this counter argument that some critics think that family ties are more important or they are the best way. Then you could say in refutation that while this may be true, or this may have been true in some cases, but majority of the critics or experts are of the opinion that education or literacy rates, they play a major role in countering drug abuse. So this is how you would go. You would give your arguments, you would give counter arguments, what you think people would mainly, the kind of objections that people would mainly give, then you're going to refute those counter arguments. And then, of course, you are going to conclude your work. Now, before I go on to the conclusion, I'm going to show you a sample argumentative paragraph that is there on the screens in front of you. Please notice that the sentence in white is the thesis statement. School uniforms should be mandatory for all students. Now, of course, there are a number of reasons Now this is a claim, and then there are arguments to support it or evidence to support it. So the evidence, or whatever your argument is, whatever your claim is, one, that they make everyone equal and what that would achieve. Second, getting ready for school would be easier and faster. And three, school uniforms would make students perform better. And then you would see that in the color green, you've got a counter argument that many people might say uniforms take away from personal freedom. And now you have the refutation. I believe that the benefits are stronger than the drawbacks. And then this paragraph would continue to explain how the benefits are stronger than the few drawbacks of having uniforms for all. Now, a couple of things that you have to avoid in your argumentative writing. Number one, don't apologize. Never suggest that you don't know what you're talking about, or that you're not an expert, or you have very little knowledge. Don't expose such kind of weakness. And of course, second of all, don't announce what you're about to do. Again, this is something that you have to avoid unless this is a very personal sort of an essay, or it is something descriptive or something narrative that's personally about you. Avoid the first person. Avoid saying things like, in this paper or in this essay, in this paragraph, I am about to say this and I'm going to argue this. Don't do it, or don't use such kind of terminology. In the end, of course, don't say, I believe, I think, in my opinion. These kind of words tend to weaken your argument. You just have to state the facts. You don't have to say what you personally believe in. Why? Because you're trying to make an argument in which you have to convince a lot of people. One person's opinion isn't going to convince everyone. You have to make sure that you have lots and lots of evidence and lots of facts to convince people. Of course, before I end this lecture, I'm going to remind you that the basic format of your oral presentation and your terminal assignment is that you have to give your thesis statement. You have to explain it a little bit in the background, give a sort of an introduction. Then you have to give 3 arguments, 3 strong arguments with lots of evidence. And of course, then you would give 3 counter arguments or 3 objections to your claim, to your stance that people you think might make. And then, of course, with those counter arguments, you have to refute that, okay, so this is a problem, but this is why it is no longer relevant. Or this is what people mainly object to, but experts think that this is not a big deal, or this is no longer applicable, this is no longer relevant. So you take the counter arguments, you refute them, and then you conclude by showing that your argument, your original claim, is stronger, and it is the one that everyone should believe in. So you're going to simply conclude by revising, restating your thesis statement. You're going to give a sort of a short summary, a sort of what should I say, sort of summarizing your entire argument, giving people once again a sort of review of what you've said up till now. That would be your conclusion. So in your conclusion, you would say that your argument is stronger, or your argument has more evidence, and these are the main evidences that support your claim or that support your stance, and this is what you think you believe in, and this is what people believe in, and this is how things should be. So this is how you would wrap up your essay. This is how you would wrap up your writing, whatever task you've been assigned to do. Now, I'm going to end my lecture here because I'm not going to assign an activity here because you already have a task that is working on your final presentations. So I hope that this lecture has given you at least some idea of how to write an argumentative work, how to give arguments, and how to make counter arguments and their refutations. If you need an example or a detailed examples of all of these things, please look at your assigned books. You have the chapter Declaration of Independence, which is supposed to be a sample of argumentative writing. If that is not enough, then I'm going to send you some supplementary work, some other samples of argumentative writing that are going to make it clear how to do it. So this is where my lecture ends, and I'll see you in the next one.